Good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. We are holding it somewhat virtually. Most of the board members and staff are off-site, while myself are on-site. So first thing we need is a call to order and a roll call.
Weidman.
Aye.
Mack.
Here.
Braden.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
And Strack.
Here.
Okay. So that gives us a quorum. Next will be approval of the agenda. We do have one correction out of the accounts payable, which is in the consent agenda. So the change was accounts payable from $2,372,323.62 to $2,353,323.62. So there is a change with the accounts payable in the consent agenda. So I need a motion to approve the agenda with the change for the accounts payable.
So moved.
Second.
Miller.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weidman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
And LaCroix.
Aye.
Okay. For public comments, we will hold any public comments until the end. Gives everybody a chance to hear the board meeting and put in their public comments, and we will read the public comments at the end. So next up are board reports. Anybody have any board reports to give?
I have a brief one. This is Christy. Just wanted to provide a quick update on a subcommittee of a ad hoc committee for EdRed. So both Paul and I are on the equity ad hoc committee for EdRed, which is a new ad hoc committee. And I attended the subcommittee meeting for data and reporting, which is addressing legislative issues of data and reporting around equity. So I sent everyone kind of the EdRed summary of the bill, but just really high level. It's a bill that would mandate certain types of reporting around disciplinary action taken in schools to highlight any inequities with regard specifically to gender and race, to make sure that we're not disproportionately punishing different groups of students. And we also, the sponsor of the bill joined for a little while as well. So, there was great discussion just about what kinds of metrics are important to measure when we think about our students and equity. I think disciplinary action is definitely one of those. So I was glad to be part of the discussion and kind of learn more. And really the summary is just that what EdRed's advocating for with this bill is trying to ensure that it is, one, not what we would call an unfunded mandate, where basically, at its worst, it would be a list of schools who aren't doing well, the bottom 20% of schools in terms of disproportionate discipline, but with no funding right now. As it's written, it doesn't contain any funding to help those schools actually do anything about their issues. So EdRed is advocating for funding so that it's not just a punishment and punitive measure for schools to be, to have these issues. And also to not have it be the last 20%, because but to also measure growth as well. So there will always be a bottom 20%, and some schools, no matter how much they grow, might always end up on that list. So they're advocating for a better way to measure it. And then also just that, that it's not an undue reporting burden on busy, overworked and overstressed administrators as well. So I'll keep everyone posted, but I liked the intent of the bill. I think it would be great to have something in place, and something that we should look at as we move forward with strategic planning as part of some sort of dashboard. So I'll keep you posted on what happens with the bill.
Thank you.
Hey, Christy, we tried to connect today, but I wanted to let you know in this report too, the Sustainable Investing Act, which I mentioned last meeting, there's
Yeah.
a whole section, I dug into a little bit, and there's a whole section on equity and diversity and inclusion and it provides measures. So if you want, I can send it to you. If you've got enough, I can keep it, but I just thought I'd let you know that I found that.
Great. I think we should just start putting that stuff in a file somewhere, and then when we're ready,
Yeah.
It'll be there at our fingertips. So yeah, please send it along. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And then I also wanted to thank Dr. Glickman for bringing us Chris Vipon, because the tech videos were amazing, and all the other resources on the website were really helpful, and to some of the families around us. And so thank you for those.
Well, I have to respond. Thank you for the comment, but of course we have to thank our whole administrative team that helped to interview and hire Mr. Vipond. So I can't take the credit all by myself. But thank you, Christy.
The only thing that I have is to say thanks to everybody who came in and signed the resolution that we were sending to our local and federal politicians. Sue sent that off early last week to all of them, and so hopefully they get some sort of a message out of us.
And I have an update, Jim, real quick on CEDAL. I attended the governing board meeting last week, and there's just a couple updates. They're updating their return to school plans with consultative work with all of the member districts. CEDAL's opening up a new school in Mundelein, the Fairhaven School, which is in conjunction with District 76. And that's going to give them much needed space for their LASSO 3 programs, which are some of the programs that help some of the kids with some of the more significant needs. So they've begun moving furniture in over there. And during the course of the governing meeting as well, the budget was approved by all the member districts. So that is my update from the governing board. And as I was at the governing board meeting, I'd like to add too, as kind of I don't know if this is really strategic or not, but I'd like to have some type of mechanism where I can, it doesn't have to be at every board meeting, but maybe in between, where I can get ideas from each of you that I can bring to the CEDAL meetings, so that there's an increased voice from District 46 as a member district. Some of the member districts are pretty quiet. Some of the member districts are more vocal, and I want to make sure I always have everybody's opinion when I go to that table. So just something I might think about changing and enhancing as we go forward. So that's my update.
I'd like to provide a quick anecdotal update. Almost 2 weeks into school, and with the proviso that less than 1/1000th of the entire student body lives in my house, I will tell you, I have 3 kids who are doing remote learning, and I'm just thinking it's going really, really well. I have, at one time during the day, I have a gym class next door, band in the basement, and choir across the hall. So it's been, I just feel like it's gone really smoothly. I just want to thank all the teachers for all the evident hard work that's been put in to make it go so well. I can't believe how robust the education is online. So yeah, from 1/1000th of the student body, a big enthusiastic thumbs up.
I'll echo that. I just need to encourage Christian to practice his saxophone in the basement instead of the garage. I think we're losing neighbors.
Yeah, I just tell my clients that 10 o'clock is PE and 10:30 is band, and remote learning is right above my office. So they're used to it now.
Okay. That being said, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
All right. Well, that was a great segue, because we are indeed very proud of our staff and our students and our families who are so supportive for a very smooth start. The students and staff are getting to know each other. As you've commented, the curriculum is quite robust, And of course, not everything was smooth, but the things that weren't smooth were things that we expected not to be smooth as we navigate our reality with remote learning. So we're going to, in a moment, Paul Lewis and Chris Vipond are going to talk about the highlights of our first Institute Day. Mr. Vipond will be specifically speaking about all of the tech work that we did. And he will share this information with you, but we were thanking Mr. Vipond, but he will for sure be thanking all of the many, many staff members who helped with putting together amazing tech PD for our students. So Paul and Chris are going to speak. Then Mary has some information to share about food service. Stephanie, Dr. Diaz is going to do an EL update, and then I'll be back to talk about some things that are coming up. So I'm going to hand that over to Mr. Lewis and Mr. Vipond.
So I'm ready to go, and Mr. Vipond is going to be doing some presenting for us. As it says, we're doing some teaching and learning and some technology updates. And so we wanted to share a little bit of information about our 3 opening Institute days. So Chris, if you can move on. So as you remember from seeing the agendas, we had 3 very busy days before the students arrived. I'm not going to go through all of the details, especially because my colleague, Mr. Vipond, is going to be going over some of the information as well. So we had some really nice videos from lots of different groups. Thank you for everyone who sent those in to us. We couldn't have a full meeting with the entire staff, so each building had their own opening day meetings with all those opening remarks, as you can see. And then we had updates from various topics and needs, including some information about equity and inclusion. The afternoon of that first day was all about technology training, more details you'll hear about. It also says the PSRP only worked in the AM that day. On Tuesday, it was job-alike meetings. Again, those are all of our teachers coming together who work on 3rd grade math or 8th grade social science or PE across the district. We had one last look at our trimester 1 scope and sequence documents, and we're working on making sure that the assessments are ready to be given online. So we were coming up with all those plans. Immediately after our job-alike time, we had team meeting times so that teachers could be talking and sharing from the different content areas. In the afternoon was planning time or work time. And then also Dr. Glickman had an opportunity to have some training and overview with all of the staff for the SAFE centers for remote learning training. So that was really important. And then on Wednesday, it was really our building day. So principals had an opportunity to have their staff together. They kept those meetings relatively short so that teachers could continue to have planning time, organizational time, all of those kind of things. And we also prepared for the student pack pickup that happened that afternoon. So those were 3 jam-packed days for our teachers moving forward. I wanted to share a little bit, though, about the results that we got. We always send out surveys about how the Institute days went. Overall, the results were very positive, and we did have some areas of potential growth that Mr. Vipond's going to reflect as well about the need for even more tech training than what we had provided, so that's always important. And then we threw in 3 sample responses. Just thank you for supporting us and providing flexibility and grace during this time. That was a theme of the staff's response, and these were comments from both our certified and our non-certified staff. So it was just really a positive 3 days. It was suggested that we could have used more days. Our teachers are always value and work well with the time that's given, but we can always look for more time for more planning, more collaboration, all of those things. And I'm just proud that that's part of our system, that collaboration is key.
So building on that, just a quick highlight of some of the opening day, Institute Days tech sessions that were provided that Monday afternoon with a variety, you can see a variety of different topics and sessions, all geared towards the tools that we knew that our teachers would need immediately to get up and running with remote learning and making life easier for all of them and our students as best we could. You've heard us talk before about the Staff Resource Hub. This was an internal site that was created over the summer months, and it was a huge collaborative effort between classroom teachers from the reopening committee that were meeting throughout the summer to instructional coaches and informational specialists, as well as members of the tech department and our techs from the district, all combined to put resources together for our staff. We made that available to our staff in mid-July, and that has continued to be a resource and a hub that our teachers go back to on a daily or at least a regular basis. And again, that was specifically made for our teachers and for our D46 needs. So again, just a quick snapshot of some of the tools and the resources and topics that are covered on that website for our staff to use. And you can see that it ranges from everything getting started with remote learning to curriculum and assessment tools and G Suite and EdTech tools also. And then we mirrored that very closely with our Student and Family Resource Hub that I'm sure you've heard about and hopefully seen. This again was a collaborative effort combining, again, all kinds of different folks coming together to make this resource available for our families, with everything from the getting started with whatever tech tools that we might need, as well as the videos and resources and continued. This site continues to evolve. I was in a meeting this morning with our info specialist, and a good portion of that meeting was focused on how we can continue to adapt this site for our students and families. So that continues to be a focus. And then again, I want to highlight on that site, there is the ability to submit tech tickets to our tech team. So if families have that ability, and you can see the screenshot of our district homepage, there's the logo on the right-hand side of our homepage with the Student Technology Hub. That link takes you right there. Otherwise, the short link, support.d46.org, is also a direct link to our tech support for our students and families. That's all for our tech update at this time.
Anybody have any questions for Chris or for Paul?
I just want to jump in, Chris. Thank you again for all of your work and your team's work. I was able to attend some of the tech sessions because I needed some help with some of the Google nuances, and I was so impressed with how our staff was collaborating and just how good natured they were just 2 days before school starts, and they were helping each other, helping me. It was really it was inspiring. So thank you.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I just want to add, I had some great feedback about how easy it's been to get help from parents in terms of dropping things off, getting hands-on help as well as virtual help. So thank you so much to the whole staff, but especially to you, Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, then I'm going to hand this over to Mary Worling, our interim CSBO, to give us an update having to do with meal service.
Yes, as you may have heard yesterday in the news, that the USDA extended the waiver for summer meals through December 31st. It's kind of interesting when we think about summer meals being served in December, but it's really about the rules and regulations associated with that program and not really about the season. So we know December is not really in the summer. But this afternoon, the Illinois State Board of Education held a meeting with all of the food service directors and vendors who provide food service to school districts about this extension of the waiver. And the Illinois State Board of Education is providing clarification, procedural clarification about how we are to move forward. So what are we doing between August 20th, the first day of school, and the extension date, which was yesterday, and clarification about the reimbursement rate, because we're not certain what that reimbursement rate would be. Clarification about the children who can receive meals. Is it up to age 18, and who can pick up the meals? It can neighbors, in addition to parents and guardians, pick up meals for children, and so on and so forth. So we await clarification from the Illinois State Board of Education. So a member of our team from Arbor attended that ISB meeting virtually today, and the District 46's food service team comes together tomorrow afternoon to debrief about what was learned on this webinar as it relates to these procedural matters. So more to come very, very soon, but this is the waiver we've all been hoping would come our way. So we're excited about it.
Thank you, Mary. And I just want to chime in that, Monday we sent out a family communication. And one of the reasons that we did that is we wanted to highlight what our current status of meal service is and wanted to make sure people knew where to pick up meals and such. And then the very next day we got news that, oh, it's all about to change. And then we made the decision yesterday to plan a remote learning planning day, which I'll talk about in a moment. And we wanted to get that information to parents as soon as possible so they could plan accordingly, which meant that today we sent a communication knowing it's very possible that it's Friday or maybe the following Tuesday, we'll be sending yet another communication regarding update on the food service. So I really don't like to pepper our families with a ton of emails, but it just all is kind of fallen that way. So that's a little information. Does anyone have any questions for Mary about that topic? Okay. So we're going to turn it over to Dr. Diaz to give us an EL update.
Sure, I have a few things to share with you. As you may remember, we were awarded the Bilingual Educator, basically a Bilingual Educator Award in July, and as of yesterday, it became active. So we were given $25,000 to spend in the area of curriculum, parent outreach, and then licensing and things like that for our newcomers. So it's very exciting. And then the team has been working really hard to screen all of our incoming students. And so I will quickly give you a bunch of numbers, but hopefully they'll make sense. So we still are holding steady at 64 different languages in our district out of the 164 that are represented in Illinois. We have 675 EL students as of August. 77 EL students are in kinder. 35 are in pre-K. We screened 109 students since August, which is pretty cool. And then 32 of these students did not qualify on the provisional screener. So that's important because the provisional screener is what I am sorry if you can hear them. The provisional screener is what the state is allowing us to use at the moment, but it does not qualify students to be 100% coded as EL. So these 32 will have to, all of them, actually, every single student will have to be rescreened, but the 32 who did not qualify on the provisional, there is a possibility that they might qualify and become active ELs once we are back on site and they're given the full test. Okay, we have 41 newcomers, and the definition of a newcomer is a person who is in the country for less than 3 years. So out of the 41, they come from 19 different countries, and we've had 9 newcomers since August.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Diaz? And Stephanie, please, no need to apologize for some noises at home. Everybody here knows what it is to be having meetings remotely, so not to worry. And Glenn, and I know you started with this, but just as a reminder, that extra grant was a grant that we were awarded due to the strong performance of the students in our program. So we're really proud of that. So thank you so much. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to just close this part up with a few pieces of information about things that are coming up and kind of a follow-up piece where I'm looking for some feedback from you board. So first of all, we have our first ever remote back to school nights coming up next week, and I think the GMS is the following Monday, and we're really excited about it. We know that our teachers and our parents are really looking forward to greeting each other remotely, although of course I'd all rather do it in person. I mentioned earlier that we have decided to use the first of our 5 allotted remote learning planning days. That'll be on Friday, the 18th of September. And that decision really came out of the feedback that Mr. Vipon was sharing earlier of, how strong the tech sessions we had, how well they received they were, and how hungry our staff is for more information. So that will be coming up on the 18th. And then I wanted to talk with you about an idea board. And I'm going to name this idea the Next Steps Task Force, although it could certainly be renamed. We're getting comfortable slowly but surely with our current remote learning reality. And we know that we need to be able to come back to our discussions about returning on site. And of course, there are 2 large areas that we have to think about. You've heard me talk about these before. There's the metrics, for example, COVID incident rates and hospital admissions. Those are 2 examples of metrics. There's also the logistics. So for example, how do we avoid quarantining an entire busload of students? And how do we make sure that we have enough substitutes in our pool to support learning in school when teachers and other staff members are absent? So those are a couple of logistic pieces that we have to consider. So Dr. Mikkel Storsley, the superintendent of District 127, and I have been talking about this together and talking about the power of putting all of our learning community together to consider these things and to consider opening criteria together. And we're both really very interested in that, creating some kind of a next steps task force that could include from at least both of our districts, some administrators, some board members, some staff members, some parents who are not board members. We also would be inviting in districts that are other feeder districts to 127. They may or may not be able to join us. It's a little more complicated for some of the other elementary districts surrounding us because some of them are kind of siphoned off into, more than one high school. But 46 and 127 are a perfect match because all of our students go to 127. And we know that it's possible that we couldn't make all of our reopening recommendations together because we know that there are structural differences between our school districts, having to do with high school and elementary. But even if we didn't make the same decisions together, we would know why. We would be looking at the same metrics, considering all of the information together. So he and I kind of powwowed about it, and we agreed that I was going to talk with you tonight and see if there was an appetite on our board to do this. He's got some committee meetings tomorrow, and he's going to be sharing this idea with his board as well. So just looking for some feedback on that idea.
Well, as I talked about it before, I think it's a great idea for us to be able to work with our neighboring school districts so that we're all on the same page so that, the community is not getting conflicting information coming back and forth. And I also told you that I would be more than happy to sit with that group if needed.
Ditto. I love that idea. Just the more we can bring our community together and make joint decisions, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Agree, 100%.
Yep, love it. Let's do it. I just like the idea of knowing, like you said, even if we're not making the exact same decisions, we can just help we're out in the community, so we get questions regardless of what district. So just being able to explain why the high school is going one direction and we've made a different decision, and just kind of knowing, that everybody was talking about it, I think will be really helpful.
All right. Well, I count that as a very positive response. I will certainly let Mikkel know that, and I'll come back to you with more information. All right, thank you. And that's it for the superintendent's report. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next are committee reports. We have the Community Engagement Committee.
At this point, we are just gearing up to start meeting next week. So nothing to share at this point other than still looking for guidance from all of you about whether we want to be a board committee or a superintendent committee. In review, the communications team was a pilot to see how we could connect people to one another and to resources. And it was, I think, pretty successful. And I shared the reasons for that last time. We have 6 members of our team out of 9 that are willing to return and interested in serving again. And if there's no vetoes on that, then we'll continue that work. Our only question, Stephen and I did talk today about whether we want it to be a board committee or a superintendent committee. And the difference would be just the number of board members on the committee. If we can extend it to 3 board members, then that allows us to rotate a little bit so that it might be a once a month commitment as opposed to a twice a month commitment. Because at this point, we're hoping to meet every other week on the off weeks from our board meetings. So Stephen and I would both love to hear from the rest of you on how you want to move forward. Should we keep it 2 board members, or is someone else interested in joining us for the work this year?
Anyone? Looks like it might be just you 2.
I think, Stephen,
Yeah.
we're
Don't jump all at once, everybody.
Yeah. Go forth and keep us updated.
Okay.
That's good.
Do that. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, the next is the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
I'm glad to share that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 15th. We had some reorganization of dates because of all the back to school nights and lots of other things going on. So we have come up with our next date. But the committee was part of the opening institute days, as I shared, in that we had some messages for staff that we wanted to convey to everybody. So a common video went out to everyone with information that came directly from our last committee meeting. So that was really great. And I'm just also going to share, as Christy shared about her subgroup from the EdRed committee, I'm also on a subgroup committee for equity. And surprisingly, I chose to be on the curriculum subcommittee. And so we had our first meeting today, and we were pleased to have Representative Ford from Chicago come and talk about one of the bills that is being promoted. And it's all about some new requirements for a revised Black history expectation for all school districts. The thing I like about the EdRed component is that EdRed is encouraging a collaboration between educators and the representatives to come up with a plan that will work for all of us. And so it's not just a mandate that we'll just have to comply with, but one that we value and support and encourage along the way. So I'm excited about that work. It's just in the beginning phases, but that's what my subcommittee on equity is working on right now. So I think it's a positive thing.
Okay. All right, so next we have is a consent agenda. As I stated before, we had the change to the accounts payable. That's the only amendment to that. So I need a motion to approve the agenda, or consent agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
The first one is a discussion and action concerning a resolution authorizing and providing for the issue of approximately 2.545 million general obligation refunding debt certificates, Series 2020, of the district for the purpose of refunding an outstanding debt certificate of the district. I believe Lynn Hennessy has popped in, correct?
So is Liz on now? If you've been hearing some,
If I could, this is Mary, I'll jump in. We are having some technical difficulties, and Chris and I have been offline trying to help Liz get in. And at this point in time, she's going to try to call in, and then I can advance the slides for her. So as we wait for Liz to get online, if we can just pause a minute, I'll give you a little bit of background. So as you know, Elizabeth Hennessy has worked with the district. She's managing director at Raymond James. And it may feel like deja vu. Liz just presented to the board in June. And at that time, she presented an overview of all existing debt that exists. So all of the open bond issues that are on our books right now, as well as these debt certificates that were entered into in August of 2018 to fund the solar project. And I think this is just popping up now. And when Liz and I conferred on the matter, the conversation is about the current marketplace and the interest rate in the marketplace, which, as you know, is historically low. And these debt certificates that were entered into by the district in August of 2018 were at a rate of 3.5%. And so I conferred with Liz Hennessy to consider what other options are available to the district. We saw potential to save some money on interest expense for the school district. Liz, can you hear us now?
I can. Can you hear me, Mary?
Yes, I can hear you. Can everyone hear Liz?
We're good.
Okay, everyone's nodding. I know you can't see that, but everyone is nodding. And so as you probably heard when you joined us, I was giving a little bit of background, not to steal your thunder, but to buy us a few minutes, as well as to paint the picture about this option before the board tonight. So I will let you jump in, Liz, while I bring up the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, all. And I apologize, I can't see you on the Google Meets for some reason tonight. I kept getting kicked out as soon as I got in. So, but I'm pleased to be here with you tonight to describe this opportunity to save the district some money, level out the payments, and hopefully save the taxpayers ultimately interest. So let me know when you have the presentation up, Mary.
The presentation is up. Can you give me a verbal that you can see it, audience, please? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I can't see you. All right, so we are now on to page 2, Liz.
Perfect. Okay, so as Mary reviewed, you issued debt certificates in 2018 to fund the solar energy project with State Bank of the Lakes. The interest rate on the debt certificates at that time was a fixed rate set at 3.5%, and there are monthly payments associated with the debt certificates that extend to August 1 of 2028. The current annual payments are $600,000 annually through fiscal year 2023, and then the payments drop to approximately $200,000 a year through fiscal year 2028. And as Mary and I were talking about the debt certificates and what's affordable, the $600,000 level a year is affordable because debt certificates, unlike general obligation bonds, are paid from your operating funds. There is no separate levy to be made to pay these debt certificates. So the district has to budget for these annual payments and has done so in the past. and the payments generally come from the operations and maintenance fund, and then are transferred to the debt service fund. So given that the $600,000 payment is affordable, refunding the existing certificates and accelerating the payments after fiscal year 23 up to that $600,000 level shortens the debt service by 3 years and saves the district interest cost over the life of the debt. So, and as Mary mentioned at the beginning, interest rates are at a historical all-time low level. So we think it's a great time to look at this option.
Next slide.
If we go to the, yes, please. So here's a little review of our interest rate market, which has been pretty stable and steady, except for the complete dislocation that occurred in mid-March with the understanding that we're in a pandemic and the potential impact it's having on our economy. So we had what I would only term as a dislocation in interest rates. Municipal interest rates dislocated from U.S. Treasury interest rates, and tax-exempt interest rates are generally followed through this AAA Municipal Market Data Index. So you see the yellow is the 30-year, the red line is the 10-year, and the purple line is the 1-year, and the blue line is the 10-year Treasury. So muni rates follow Treasury rates, except when we had this pretty much run on the bank when many investors tried to sell all at the same time and there weren't enough buyers. So rates skyrocketed by 2% within about a week. Luckily, the Fed stepped in and offered to be the purchaser of last resort for any municipal issuers. That assured the market, rates came down. And as you can see now here, coming to August of 2020, we're at a super low level in interest rates. If we go to the next page, we can see the actual numbers on these interest rates. And we see the historic high on March 9th, or low on March 9th, and then the historic high on March 23rd on the 10 years, 279, then back down, we're under 1%. And significantly, if you look at the rates here as of August 12th, the rates don't even get over 1% until 17 years out. So now keep in mind, this is for AAA rated issuers, and this index is made up of the strongest states in the union. It's not any local school district issuers. It's not any lower rated states, certainly not the state of Illinois. It's the highest, purest, strongest AAA credits. So Illinois trades at a spread to these indexes. But having said that, interest rates are still incredibly low. And you know, a lot of these yields will be under 1%. So great time to go to market. If we go to the next page, this is an illustration of what we're talking about with the debt structure. So if you can see on the presentation in the box, the Series 2018 prior debt service, you see the payments are $600,000, $430,000 for the next 3 years, and then they go to $191,000 for the life of the debt. And this is on a kind of a calendar year ending 11/1. What we're looking at doing is refunding these and keeping the payments right at that $600,000 level, but paying them off in just a little over 4 years, so actually 5 years. So there's not much savings in the first 3 years. There's actually a higher cost when compared to the existing payments in the next 2 years. But then those 3 years of $200,000 or $191,269 a year are complete savings to the district. So all told, that's about $148,000 of savings. And in present value, that comes to about $146,000. We like to look at these things. The public finance rule of thumb is if you've got a present value savings after paying all cost of issuance, which these savings are, of over 3%, then it's kind of worth considering. So this particular savings ratio is at 5.86%. So I think it's a very strong refunding opportunity. If we look at the graphic on the right, we see in the gray shaded area the outstanding debt service payments on the 2018 bonds. And you can see those stretch out to calendar year 28. And in this case, if we refunded them, we would be, the payments would be right at the blue bars, and they would end in the year 2025 calendar year. So that's the good news. I was sharing some numbers with Mary today, rerunning these, and we think the savings is, still right around that $150,000 area, assuming rates stay low when we get actual bids for the bonds. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight is the type of sale. So an issue like this, where the par amount is, the amount of bonds we're selling is close to just under 2.5 million, because that's the amount of debt still outstanding on this loan, we consider either a public sale or a private sale. And a public bond sale is where you're selling to both institutions and individuals. You get a bond rating, and the district has a very strong bond rating of AA+. You put together a preliminary official statement, which is an offering document that's very, very thorough with regard to all state and federal tax laws, as well as huge explanation on the impact of COVID-19 on the district. There are additional legal fees and processes associated with this offering document. A private bond sale is when you're selling bonds to sophisticated investors like banks. And because these bonds are under 10 million, they are bank qualified. So banks are very interested. They're also interested because of the short term on the bonds, only 5 years. They like that payback very much when purchasing debt. So what I show you in this chart here is a comparison of the cost of issuance associated with a public sale versus the cost of issuance associated with a private placement. So we have bond counsel fees in either case. You have a placement agent fee in a private sale. You have an underwriting fee in a public sale. In a public sale, you'll have a disclosure counsel who will give you the opinion on that public offering document. You also have a bond rating fee to get the rating applied to the bonds. That's about $13,000. Official statement printing. You might have a surety bond. In this case, a refunding. It probably goes away in both cases. You have extra fees for bond registrar, paying agent possibly. And in a private placement, sometimes you will have bank counsel fees. The bank sometimes, not all the time, want to make sure that those documents are in conformance with the bank's rules. So you can see the public sale cost of issuance is almost twice as much as a private placement. So the cost of issuance are lower for a private placement, but because a private placement is not rated, the interest rate is typically higher than a public sale, which would utilize your AA+ rating. So if we go to the next slide, we went out and we called a couple banks, and we got what we call an indicative bid, or an estimated interest rate from BMO Harris Bank for a private placement. And we went and looked at other similarly rated AA+ bonds in the market in Illinois to get the interest rates that you see for the public sale. So you see those rates are unbelievably low. I mean, they start at 0.33 and they end up at 0.51% on public sale. But you have the higher cost of issuance, so that your all-in true interest cost is 1.25, and your total savings is about $148,000. If we look at the BMO bid, even though the interest rates are higher because the cost of issuance is so low on the small issue, the savings is about the same at $147,200. So this is just looking at one indicative bank bid. The process we suggest is to put a term sheet together and go out to multiple banks to find out what interest rate they would offer. So that's a little bit about the process. But as you can see, the blend of interest rate and cost of issuance is the thing that gives you your all-in true interest cost and therefore your savings. So right now, it's really a dead heat between the public sale and the private sale. So our suggestion is we go get multiple bids on the private sale and see how that compares to a public sale when we look at interest rates as they are at the time of the bid. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions?
I do not.
Okay. Let's go to the last page then, Mary, and look at our financing schedule. So what you should have received in your board packets along with this presentation is a draft of what's called the Refunding Debt Certificate Sale Resolution. Now that sale resolution may look like a bunch of legalese with a bunch of blanks in it because it is blank. But the idea is that you'd have a chance to kind of look at the form of this resolution. And tonight we would review the sale process and the timetable and see if the board agrees that we should move forward with the refunding debt certificate. If the board approves a motion to proceed with the refunding of the debt certificates tonight, we would then tomorrow distribute a draft term sheet to interested banks. And you can be assured we will go back to State Bank of the Lakes and see if they can give us a better rate than they have, as well as other banks in the area that we know are interested in Illinois debt. Then we would receive those term sheet bids from the interested banks by noon on September 15th. And we would talk to Mary and the district about the winning bid. It should be very straightforward, and compare that with the public market and make sure that we're getting the best deal for the district. Then we would bring the filled in refunding debt certificate resolution, including the approval of the winning bidder or purchaser, to the board at your regular meeting on September 16th for your approval. So if that all works well and the board approves that resolution, as well as the low interest rate bank bidder, we would then send a notice of redemption to State Bank of the Lakes the next day. And we would continue to process the refunding bond documents. And then on October 1st, we would close the bond issue, pay off the debt certificates at State Bank of the Lakes, and the new issue would be in place per the schedule we looked at. Any questions on the financing schedule?
Elizabeth, it sounds pretty straightforward to me that we're going to pay our debt off early and save the district a lot of money. Is there any downside that we should be aware of?
You know, I don't think so. I think it's a win-win. You know, Mary and I talked a lot about whether it makes sense to keep the payments at $600,000 a year, because it is affordable and it's what you have to budget in the next 3 years. Keep that payment schedule in the next 5 years. So I guess there could be, an outside situation where that $600,000 a year is heavy on the budget. If, you know, the worst of the worst of the worst happens, we talk about state funding and or tax freeze or any of the multiple things that as Illinois schools has been hanging over Illinois schools' heads for a number of years. But I think it's a relatively small amount, and it's relatively small compared to your overall budget. So it seems affordable. It seems smart to pay these off at lower rates in 3 years early. So the only danger I could see is if for some reason that $600,000 was not affordable in your budget. Mary, maybe you can add to that.
I agree with the approach, for the structure of the debt. I do believe that the $600,000 is affordable. If we look at the O&M levy, we're not levying the statutory maximum in the O&M fund. So that tells me that we have a little bit of margin there. Should there, to use your terminology, the worst of the worst should happen, we do have a little bit of room to cover these payments through the O&M levy as we transfer the funds from O&M to debt service to make these payments. I believe it is in the best interest to take those years off the end of the current debt structure and pay this off sooner rather than later. I see that as reducing risk in the long term. So I think that is a true advantage to the board.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Jason LaCroix. I have a question as well. This current situation seems to make a lot of sense, and I don't see a lot of downside except for the kind of external political things you're talking about. But I think that's ameliorated by what Mary talks about. My question is, given this historically low interest rate environment, could this same thinking be applied to the other debt that we carry? I don't remember the particulars about the rates, but is there any opportunity there to restructure any of that other existing debt given the current low rates?
Unfortunately, there is not. The other debt is mostly non-callable to the years out. The reason we're able to do this for this particular bond issue is that it was a private placement to begin with, and in negotiating with State Bank of the Lakes when they initially did this in 2018, the State Bank of the Lakes made these bonds callable at any time. So where I say there's not option right now, there will be opportunities if rates stay low to refund your 2012 bonds in the year 2022 and your 2014 bonds in the year 2024. So those opportunities are in the future at the moment. So what Congress did when they passed the tax reform bill of 2018, they disallowed the ability for any municipal issuer to refund bonds in advance of the call date at tax-exempt interest rates. So these call dates on your outstanding general obligation bonds, which are public sale bonds, are in the future in 2022 and 24. So then there will be an opportunity to refund them on a tax-exempt basis. Again, the State Bank of the Lakes are callable at any time. So that is a nice flexibility to have with that loan, and that's what brings us this opportunity right now.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so the discussion would need to be as a board on if we would like to move forward with this project of reissuing these bonds. Everybody in agreement that we should do this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I think I have to read this resolution, correct? To pass this?
And a roll call vote.
Correct. Okay, so I am looking to pass let's see, how do I say this? I need a motion to approve resolution for the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education to authorize the administration to proceed with the sale and the solicitation of bids from interested banking institutions for refunding of the 2018 debt certificates. I read that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Strack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
and Mac.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, Elizabeth and Mary, for that information.
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, next I need a motion to approve the annual EdRed membership.
So moved.
So moved.
I heard two Christies at once.
I'll second.
Okay,
Weedman,
aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mac,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Strack.
Aye.
Okay, good. All right, now we're on to unfinished business. The first is the continued discussion, or first and only, is continued discussion of Meadowview and Park campus roof projects.
All right, I'm going to ask Mr. Halpern to talk with us about this a little bit. And he's provided you with a memo already.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good night. We at the district in the administration have gone back and forth about it, and we would like to bring back up the rebidding of the roof projects for Meadowview and for Park. Given the opportunity that as we stand right now with obviously schools kind of open with the children out of there, it gives us the opportunity to really go through and be able to look at the project that's at hand and go back out to bid and get in there early so that we can bring the contractors in and get the best possible price for the district and get everything set up for either the early springtime, if at all possible, or right as school lets out for the summertime. So the project will be completed and ready to go before school starts up for the 21-22 year. As long as the board gives us the approval and consideration on it, we would start moving forward with our architects so that we can line up everything and get the dates out there and the contractors set up. There's been a couple minor adjustments to the original bid process that we have. Myself and Mary have gone over it, and we spoke with the architects in regards to it, from changing dates a little bit and pushing back in the original contract, the 45-day out approval to a 60-day. So that way, once we get the bid process in, we would be able to have appropriate time to bring it to board, show all the bids, and choose our contractors. And given the opportunity, if for whatever reason we did not make it back in time or back to school because of the pandemic going on, the possibility of starting in early spring of the roofing project.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Halpern?
No, it's obviously something that's been on the radar, so.
On the radar, pushed off the radar, and back on the radar. Exactly. So
We figured the early bird catches the worm on it.
Yeah. Adam, did you, in your memo, you mentioned that, if I read it correctly, that Park has an underlying issue that needs to be rectified right now?
That
as
is
well?
correct.
Okay.
That is
Can
correct.
you tell us?
Sure. So the underlayment in it, the installation part of it has kind of buckled up. The way that that roofing is done, so that's a rubberized roof, and it kind of floats. So when the wind comes through, it kind of moves a little bit so that there's no tear in the rubber. And the winters that we have and the summers that we have, the extreme weather, the changing in it, it kind of will expand and contract. But we don't know the exact issue as to what happened. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for that, and I don't see any real documentation within it, but it's buckled. And before any real damage is brought on, we would like to try and get that rectified, because we all know that water will just take away at everything. And if the water gets in underneath that underlayment, it'll drop ceilings. It will just continue its way down through the building from walls to everything. So without being able to really pull up the roof, it's kind of tough to tell what the actual cause was yet. Now, I know as I've walked that roof and I've looked over it, and by no means am I a roofing contractor to be able to give you a definitive answer on it. But I can see that some of the drains are not in the appropriate places. And so there's spots where water has sat, and that could have been an underlying issue to it. So the weight of the water over here, and maybe a freezing of it, and then a wind comes through, because if anybody goes out to park, they know the wind never stops there. So it'll kind of just keep fluttering and fluttering, and that'll cause that underlayment, because the underlayment on it is a couple inches thick, but it's really only fiberglass. It's like a foam board that they put over it. It'll cause it to kind of rock a little bit, and it could have just buckled.
Okay, thank you.
Is this project at Park something that needs to be addressed immediately? So that even if it's, they're done at, some point in this fall versus waiting until the spring so we can get it done without causing any more damage? Is that something we should be having more of a discussion about?
Well, I would not mind getting a roofing contractor in there to really give us that background on it and give us the idea on it. I don't like the way it looks just because the water does sit there, and I don't want it to rip that roof. I don't know how long it has actually been that way. I would highly suggest getting that taken care of before, obviously, Meadowview. I would like to see that done, especially right now, having the ability to have it open. Maybe it's an easier fix than we think.
Right. Well, I'm thinking, too, is, unfortunately, you just kind of found out about it, but if it's something that can be done, even maybe before winter hits, that it would be done, and then we don't have to worry about it over the winter. But I don't know what the realistic opportunities are to do that.
So tomorrow, with approval on it, I can bring in a couple contractors, or at least one that we know of, that can take a look at it and really give us a good answer on it. I can get something together for the board for the next board meeting and see where we can go with it from there, if everybody's okay with that.
I'm okay with it. And then obviously we'd probably have to look at whatever emergency bids or whatever we have to do to get that done versus the regular bid process, if there is anything such like that, which I'm sure you guys would know about. Anybody else have any comments on, well, first what I talked about and then the project overall?
It sounds like a good idea to me to get in there to make sure that we don't have a mold issue come in the spring too. I guess just if it's possible to have local people part of the bidding process, it'd be great to reinvest into the local community if possible. Certainly don't want to jeopardize any quality of work, but that would be something that I think would be helpful to our community. So just a suggestion.
To what extent do we have control over who bids a project? I mean, I'm thinking, don't we just put it out and the people that bid are the people who bid?
You would put it out that way. Depending on the emergency end of it. If it is something that is indeed, they say, yes, this is something you need to get taken care of right away. Per the state, if I'm not mistaken, it's up to, and Mary, you might be able to help me on this, but I believe it's up to $100,000 as long as it's an emergency to be able to take care of right away without necessarily going out to that bid on it. But I do know also that we do have, there are part of co-ops where we have them that it's already a state bid to be able to get somebody in there and take care of right away.
Okay. Well, we'll be able to bring more information back at the next board meeting then.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't foresee any rain between then and now, so unfortunately.
All right.
Okay. Next, we're moving on to new business. The first one is a discussion of the intergovernmental agreement with Lake County, EMA, for the CARES Act grant.
All right. I'm going to ask Mary Worley to talk about that for a moment.
Yes. This matter before the board relates to Federal CARES Act funding. As you know, the federal government has distributed funds through local governments as well. And as a result, the Lake County EMA, Emergency Management Association, has monies to manage and to distribute based on the needs of the local community, based on the needs of Lake County. And through that process, Lake County EMA has identified a distribution method that they would employ within the county for various entities, and school districts would be one. And so through that differentiation process that Lake County has applied, School District 46 is eligible to receive just under $115,000 in reimbursement funds through the Lake County EMA CARES money. And this is a reimbursement process for eligible expenses. The first step in order to be considered eligible to participate in the distribution of these CARES Act funds from Lake County is to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Lake County. So this is an agreement between the school district and the county. And basically what we're agreeing to is that we will review the requirements, we will seek to understand the expenses that are eligible, and we will keep proper records and documentation of our expenses when we submit for reimbursement. The intergovernmental agreement and application in which to be considered for reimbursement is due mid-October to Lake County. And so the option for the board to enter into this intergovernmental agreement is for discussion tonight and possible action or approval of the intergovernmental agreement at the next meeting, September 16th. So it's for your discussion tonight to consider whether this opportunity aligns with the goals of the board. Are there any questions?
Nope, it doesn't sound like it.
If you're interested in receiving funds,
Yeah.
then you need to enter into this IGA.
Okay. So you'll put that on the next agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so next is the discussion of Community Engagement Committee guidance.
I think we covered this earlier in the meeting. So Stephen, I don't have anything else, do you? Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay. And finally, the next is discussion of the strategic planning process. So as I was talking, as Stephen and I were both talking to Lynn the other day regarding what direction we wanted to go on the strategic planning process which is part of her goals as a part of her contract. We'd had asked her to get some information from people that would, outside people that would be able to do the strategic planning process for us, and some pricing. The thought process behind some of that was, with everything that's been going on for the 2020 COVID disaster that we've had, Lynn and her team really has had their, hands tied and taken up a lot of their time, trying to get reopened, trying to get remote learning going, everything else that's been kind of on the plate, as we shall say. So kind of the thought process to kind of alleviate some of that, that task for her, and look for an outside group to come in and do the strategic planning for us, or not for us, but facilitate it for us. So that was some of the process that we had asked Lynn to do, and Lynn, I think you're going to follow up, correct?
Yeah. Yes. So thank you, Jim. And certainly our team appreciates that consideration. Although please do know that we do really continue to stand at the ready to facilitate the process if that's what the board chooses. So it's important to me that you've heard that. I have had the chance to speak with 4 facilitators or facilitator groups. Facilitation of this kind of a process can be really very, very wide. It can be pretty narrow. And the folks that I talked to, we're talking on more of a narrow end, because frankly, a wider lens is a much more expensive process. And I'm sure that's not surprising to anyone. So I know, Jim, your questions were pretty specific to what would it really cost us, and can we budget for that? And Mary and I have had a conversation, and we do know that we can fit this cost into our budget, if that's what the board chooses to do. So depending on who we go with, we would be spending anywhere from about $10,000 to maybe about $15,000. Now, there are people who, one of the people I spoke to as recently today said, well, it can be as low as 10 and as much as 30. As I spoke with other superintendents and I gathered feedback from them, there are folks who spent upwards of $50,000 on a project. I didn't think that we were going to be having an appetite for that. I didn't think I was going to be recommending that. So we're probably looking at around 10, 12, something like that. The processes that were described to me hovered around 3 or 4, maybe 3-hour meetings that would be preceded by some surveying of community members. We would be able to use our thought exchange tool to really reach into the community to get a lot of information from the community. I believe all of them talked about making sure that we include community member stakeholders who are not otherwise connected to the district. So that's important, I think, to everybody in some way or another. And a couple of them talked with me about being able to hold stakeholder, to hold like focus groups or listening sessions. And I feel pretty confident that those who didn't bring that up, if we were to say, well, this is important to us and we want to do that, then they would be able to do that as well. So the only other piece of information I can share at this moment is about the when. That was something that Stephen and Jim and I spoke about as well. Stephen, I know you were talking about, it seems so unlikely that we would be able to do this before the start of the year, before the start of the new year. So when I talked with all of the facilitators, they all said, February is a really good time to be doing this kind of thing. You can do it, kind of over a month, 2-month span and have it really ready to go in April. And there was one more piece I wanted to share. Oh, and here's the other piece about doing it at that point. we all know that we do not know how long we are in a remote setting. So certainly I spoke with all of them about, we need to be able to picture doing this remotely. What does that look like for you? So we had those conversations. If we do this in February, we may have a chance to actually be in person, which would be wonderful. But they would all stand at the ready to do it remotely as well. So that's the information I have for you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Lynn?
Not a question so much as a comment. And I think the first time it was brought up about doing an outside facilitation, I was unclear about the need for it. So I wanted to make clear that I'm in favor of the idea of facilitation. I think it makes a lot of sense, not just from a bandwidth perspective for Lynn and the administrators, but rather if you consider that the result of the strategic plan, has impacts on all stakeholders, it just makes a lot of sense to have someone, detached driving the ship, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So not for any other reason except for it just keeps everything where it needs to be. So I'm in favor of the idea, and the timeline, I think, makes a lot of sense as well.
Any other comments?
No, I think it's a wise investment for all the reasons stated. This is an investment, as Jason said, it's an investment in the strength of the plan, which is so important. So definitely in support.
I agree. I'm very much in support of the plan as you've discussed it. And I think it's so important to have input from external stakeholders and people who don't have children directly in the district. I think there's a lot of expertise in our community that we could really leverage in this. So thank you for being so thorough and doing due diligence and finding 4 different bids. It'll be nice to be able to see how they differ and which ones we want to go with. So thank you.
Okay. We are up to topics for a future agenda. I know we have the IGA for Lake County EMA. I assume we'll talk about the strategic planning again next meeting, Lynn?
Well, can we hover there for a moment?
Sure.
I would like to know how the board would like to proceed in the selection of the facilitator. So, I can bring you their proposals. You can meet people. I can bring you just a recommendation. All of those by superintendents and boards. So without some direction from you, board, I won't know what direction you would like to use.
I personally am okay with you just bringing a recommendation for somebody to facilitate that.
Yeah, that'd be fine with me too. Yeah.
Same.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would concur in it. If it fits the timeline, we're good.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Thank you. Okay, so yes, we will. I'll be back to you with more information about strategic planning next time. Hold on a second. I'm adding it in. Okay. We'll have action on the resolution for authorizing refinancing the solar projects. We may have 2 union MOUs. I believe I've spoken with you about them in the past. So we're not sure if we'll have them ready. We'll see if we have them for you, but they may be coming. The Lake County IGA action that Mary was talking about will bring you the park roof update. We'll be bringing you a policy to look at, and this is outside of our usual policy cycle, although, by the way, spoiler alert, it's time to do a policy meeting again soon, so that information is going to be coming. But this is a policy that's specific to issues to do with remote learning and teletherapy. And so I'm going to ask that Heather talk with us about this a little bit so that when you see it, because we're hoping that we can look at it and vote on it at the next meeting. So Heather, can you talk about that for a moment?
Okay, there we go. I'm sorry, I was having trouble with the mute. Hi, everyone. Currently, we have a policy in our policy manual that shares the essence that families or guardians cannot audio or video record in IEP meetings, conferences, and things like that without request in writing, and it has to be due to a nature of a disabling condition that prevents participation without it. Unfortunately, it does not prohibit our current environment. So this policy is really to put in place the preventative measure of recording classrooms on the home end of this equation, including, it also has a part where we also are stating that we cannot, I'm sorry about the noise in the background, cannot record our classrooms with students in it, thus creating a student record with multiple students in it. So it really protects both ends, and, but especially our students.
So you'll get a chance to see it next time. We're hoping to be okay. And then is there a question? Nope.
No, you froze up.
Oh, sorry. Apparently I froze up and looked silly, I can tell. All right, that's fine. And we will start next time with the public hearing at 6 o'clock on our budget. And that's it.
Was there any discussion coming regarding CSBO for the hiring process? Is that coming up anytime soon?
Well, I can share with you the timeline that we're thinking about. So right now does feel a little bit too soon, simply because CSBOs are likely really trying to get their own school districts up and running, right? And are probably not looking for jobs. But Mary and Jane and I have all talked about this, and we are thinking about getting it posted in November. With the giving people the chance to apply. We can do some interviewing probably in December with the hope to hire in January. We definitely want to get out early, and we are. I can tell you that I'm interested, and we can talk more about this at another time, but interested in being able to find an experienced CSBO, and so anybody who's going to be looking. We want them, we want to have crack. That's a good way to put it. So, not yet.
Okay. Okay. And then one other thing that it's been something that's been on our to-do list for a while, and that's the finance committee that Jason has brought up a few times with us looking at a new CSBO and having an audit coming through and going back through negotiations. It's probably beyond time for us to start that up. So I don't know, Jason, I know you had some parameters of what the committee would look like and kind of the framing with it. Would you be willing to kind of lead that up and maybe talk with our interim CSBOs and see how we would form that committee and what the parameters that we would need to set for that?
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Froze again. Start calling her Elsa.
Can you hear me now? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's fine. That gave me time to think about how I wanted to put this. So one of the pieces that I know I've spoken with you about, board, is that we have 2 interim CSBOs right now. And they both have, and they're both retired administrators. And I'm sorry to be speaking about you in the third person, Mary, but they're both retired administrators. And retirement laws that they have to follow very deeply or really the number of hours that they can work for us. It is not like, they're not like the rest of our administrators who can come in for meetings at any time. So for example, when Mary is here this evening for a board meeting, this board meeting plus some hours that she worked in the afternoon to prepare for it, that counts as a half a day for her. And so I have shared the concern that were we really, have a robust start of a finance committee this year with our interim CSBOs that continues to limit the other work that they can do for us as we try to make some adjustments in our business office. So what I'm wondering is, could we perhaps use this year, use Jason's expertise and framework that he's thinking about to actually plan for a finance committee. I think it would be interesting if any people who are interested in being CSBOs in our school district happen to be watching this meeting and they want a hint as to what an interview question might be. Perhaps the CSBOs could also describe what kind of process they might use, and then we'd be able to have that up and running for next year. So I just wanted to offer that as an alternate possibility, and it's really with respect for the time of our 2 retired administrators who are our CSBOs.
Yeah, Lynn, so those are the terms that I understood my marching orders to be, was to kind of understand scoping, what would the mission statement of the committee be? Not that we were going to be up and fully running and soon because of those parameters. We discussed this, I think, last time we talked about this.
Yeah.
But that doesn't sound like it's feasible yet. But in order to make the most of it from day one with our gleaming new hire, right, we should have some of the legwork and groundwork laid.
Absolutely. And wouldn't that person be glad to walk in knowing that they have a board who's, ready for them in that way? Absolutely.
Now, Lynn, that being said, it's still appropriate for me to talk to Mary and Jane, right? To talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to see if we had a common understanding as to how soon we would be getting this up and going. That's all. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. They're both very wonderful to talk to. It'll be a great conversation, I promise. All right. I think that's it for our next meeting then.
Okay. Next is public comments. I do have one person in the audience here. Did you have anything you needed to publicly say? Hold on 1 second. I'm going to turn my camera towards her so that you can see her.
Hi.
You can come closer.
I'm a mother doing this. I'm glad you guys are patting yourselves on the back. But we, as K through 3 parents, are having a very difficult time. First off, we don't have the proper technology. You guys are trying to run Google Classroom and Seesaw. You have children that are not capable of doing this. You are taking all of our time to spend, and sometimes we're having to throw away everything in our own homes for everything. You have lunch hours going at different times. What am I, a short order cook? Have you guys taken any of this stuff into consideration for any of us? Let alone the hours that these children are in front of these devices. Supposedly, they're supposed to get so many breaks. I'm sorry, 4 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 2 minutes there, to a child that has been locked down in front of a computer for an hour and a half is crazy. You're not thinking of their emotional well-being. You have third grade classrooms that have over almost 30 children to 2 people, sometimes only 1. You have children that are writing obscene comments in chats, and children or teachers not having control since you guys took over Google Classrooms. We had more control, or you guys had more control at Zoom than they are right now at Google Classrooms. Go Guardian, what a joke. I have a child who has an IEP and tried to do his first speech yesterday. Wow, that was a bomb and a half. We'll see what happens next. I wish you guys would take a little bit more time in thinking about us, let alone also what the children are going through and the stress that you're causing on the households. You've got to take all of this in consideration. And also, when a parent calls you, Mrs. Glickman, don't push it off on a principal. You make that phone call. We are here to supposedly work together as a community, as a team for all of this. You need to take consideration of us. I've gotten to know the technology department so well. Brian and Mark are amazing. They have helped so much, but they can only do so much. And the fact you guys rushed the school year, I think you're hurting the kids more than you think. You don't have the proper equipment yet. And also, some parents don't have, the great internet or anything like that. The calls being dropped, the constant, it's so frustrating when you're having to put your child back on Google Classrooms. I think today I was at 7 times. It's frustrating. The first week and a half, my child had no voice, couldn't text, couldn't unmute himself, was constantly booted every few minutes. You got to look on our side. I'm surprised there's not more parents here because I've been watching the Grays Lake Moms page, and so many of us feel that we are defeated and we are losing this battle. And I also saw public comments on there today about how they feel that you all are not listening to them, which isn't right. I think you guys need to maybe redo a survey, actually put a survey together where parents can actually write stuff and tell them what they're actually thinking and how this is affecting their children. Also, there's a third grade classroom that is forcing children to wear headphones. There are some kids that just can't handle all that. That shouldn't happen. I had a huge list, and I hope I kind of covered most of it. I'm surprised the PTF isn't here, also supporting these children. There should be more of these inner groups working together. Definitely.
Thank you. Can you, ma'am,
Mm-hmm.
you put your name and contact information down so we can follow up with you? And if you have an email, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, Chris, do you have any public comments?
Yes, I have a couple. Our first one is from Amy Slutsky. I'm a special needs mom, advocate, and mental health provider. I plan on submitting the same question at every opportunity until the district responds to my community of special needs parents. When will you look out for our children with the extra care that they deserve and are federally mandated to have? Safe centers that are permitted to be attended by all, but that are not equipped for special ed, are a violation of FAPE, is also a violation of common sense and common decency. We want related services by appointment, IEPs, and 504 plans followed, and a detailed plan with timeline for when you will follow almost every other district in Lake County and bring our kids back to the professional educators who want them. Thank you for listening. And the second one is from Sharon V. Lake Zurich is following a new model for their IEP kids that allows them to be in person. Why can't D46 follow this model? And that is it.
Okay, that's all the comments, Chris?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. There is no need for a closed session for tonight. So next will be, I would need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
Okay, Dr. Glickman, I will send you an email with the contact information from the speaker today. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.